The crowd inside the packed auditorium was restless that evening. Cameras flashed, murmurs filled the air, and every seat was taken. It wasn't a regular town hall meeting. The people could feel it in their bones. Something extraordinary was about to happen. On stage stood Senator John Kennedy, his expression calm but his eyes sharp with purpose. He had been invited to speak about political integrity and truth in leadership, but no one knew he was carrying a secret that would shake the entire room to its core. As the lights dimmed slightly and the spotlight focused on him, Kennedy adjusted his microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his Louisiana drawl steady and deliberate. "Sometimes the truth doesn't just set you free, it sets everyone free." The crowd went silent. Even the reporters in the front row stopped typing. The senator's gaze moved to one corner of the stage, where Congresswoman Maxine Waters sat with her usual composed confidence. She smiled faintly, perhaps thinking this would be another political sparring match, but she had no idea what was coming. Kennedy paused for a moment, as though wrestling with the weight of what he was about to say. "I've spent the last few months digging into policies, speeches, and decisions," he continued, "but what I found wasn't political, it was deeply personal. And it involves the family of Congresswoman Waters." Gasps echoed through the hall. Cameras zoomed in. Waters shifted in her seat, visibly taken aback. "Now, before anyone misunderstands me," Kennedy said, his voice softer now, "this isn't about shaming, it's about truth and redemption." He reached into his folder and pulled out a note photograph, sepia-toned, worn at the edges. He held it up to the camera. It showed a young woman standing in front of a small community center, holding hands with a group of children. This woman, Kennedy said, was Maxine Waters' mother, Lillian. Most people never heard her name, but she was the reason a whole generation of kids in South Los Angeles had a future. The audience leaned forward, confused yet intrigued. Waters herself looked stunned. Kennedy continued, telling a story few had ever heard. Lillian Waters, during the height of racial segregation, had secretly opened her home as a shelter for runaway children kids abandoned, abused, or lost in the system. She used her small savings to feed them, clothed them with her own hands, and taught them how to read. While politicians argued in Washington, Kennedy said, Lillian Waters was fighting her own war against injustice in her kitchen. The words hit hard. People began murmuring, realizing this was not an attack, but something deeper. Kennedy stepped closer to the edge of the stage. "But here's the part no one knows," he said, voice trembling slightly. "She paid a heavy price. She was arrested twice for harboring runaway minors, and her name was blacklisted in certain social circles. Yet she never stopped helping those children. She once wrote in her journal, and I quote, 'If doing right makes me a criminal, then I'll wear those chains proudly.'" The auditorium fell into complete silence. Some people in the crowd wiped away tears. Cameras captured the raw emotion on Waters' fascia, her usual political composure replaced by visible shock and vulnerability. Kennedy turned toward her gently and said, "Congresswoman, I didn't bring this to embarrass you. I brought it because the world needs to know the truth about where you came from, and the truth about your mother's courage, her sacrifice, and her faith in humanity." Waters slowly stood, clutching the edge of the podium. Her voice quivered as she spoke. "Yeah, broken bar. I didn't think anyone would ever talk about her," she said softly. "My mother never sought attention. She believed her work would die quietly with her. But Senator, a broken bar." She paused, her eyes glistening. A broken bar. Thank you. Thank you for reminding me that real heroes never need headlines." The crowd erupted. Applause thundered through the hall. People rose to their feet, and even Kennedy looked momentarily overwhelmed by the response. Reporters who had come expecting a scandal were now documenting a moment of grace and humanity. Kennedy waited for the applause to fade, then spoke once more. "This, ladies and gentlemen, is what leadership should look like. Not tearing one another down, but lifting each other up by telling the truth with compassion." His words struck something deep within everyone present. It wasn't about politics anymore. It was about the human stories buried beneath power and pride. After the event, Kennedy and Waters met privately backstage. She told him stories of her mother's life, how Lillian used to sew clothes for children she'd never met, and how she prayed every night for a kinder America. Kennedy listened quietly, visibly moved. "She built what Washington keeps promising," he said softly. "A nation that looks after its own." That night, news channels didn't headline political feuds or scandals, so they replayed the story of Lillian Waters, the forgotten hero of a broken time. Social media exploded with the hashtag #LillianLives, inspiring countless others to share stories of their own unsung heroes, mothers, fathers, neighbors who changed lives in silence. In the days that followed, Congress approved funding for community-run shelters across the country, naming one of the initiatives after Lillian Waters herself. Kennedy and Waters stood side by side as the ribbon-cutting ceremony, no longer adversaries, but allies in something far greater. As cameras rolled and the ribbon was cut, Kennedy said, "Sometimes the most powerful truth isn't about what divides USA but about the love and courage that built us." Waters nodded, tears glimmering in her eyes. The crowd cheered once more, not for politicians this time, but for the spirit of compassion that could still unite a nation. And as the sun dipped behind the Capitol that evening, the world was reminded of a simple truth: legacies aren't written in speeches or laws, they're written in love, sacrifice, and the courage to do what's right when no one's watching.